You are watching Macro TV. We are busy with Study Unit 2 and Chapter 3 in Fourie and Burger. This is video number 8 of 10 explaining the contents of this chapter. Throughout, we've been looking at the real economy and the monetary sector, and we've put them together in the form of the IS-LM model. The previous video talked about the derivation of the IS curve, and now we will look at the LM curve. The derivation of the LM curve, as we've said earlier, every point on the LM curve represents a point where the monetary sector is in equilibrium. All the combinations of interest rates and income that are consistent with such an equilibrium in the money market. Now we are focusing on the real demand for money and the real supply of money. You can derive this LM curve by using the money market diagram and the investment diagram. Now, let's start with an initial equilibrium in the money market over here at an interest rate R0 and with the demand for money for the income level at Y0. So there's an association between this level of interest rate R0 and an income level of Y0. And that gives us one point in this space where you have interest rates on the vertical axis and income on the horizontal. So that's it, our initial equilibrium. Then, if there is an increase in income to another income level, Y1, that would imply that the demand for money has to increase. So at higher levels of income, we know that there's a greater demand for money. So the demand for money curve shifts upward, and this pushes interest rates up to the level R1. Now the logic is that at this interest rate level R1, and the associated income level Y1, that gives you another equilibrium point. And if you plot these different points, you get an upward sloping LM curve representing all the combinations of interest rates and income where the monetary sector is in equilibrium. The formula for the LM curve is simply equilibrium in the monetary sector. So where the real supply of money is equal to the real demand for money. Now I say real because we're dividing by the price level. So we are taking out the effect of inflation and only looking at the real money supply and the real money demand. Now we know the money demand can also be broken up into these components that we'll talk about in a moment's time. When the money supply is regarded as exogenous, and we just look at the real money supply on the left. Now, the properties of the LM curve is that it has a positive slope. Higher incomes are associated with higher equilibrium interest rates. So keep this in mind. At a high income, you have a greater demand for money, and that demand for money pushes up the interest rate. So that's where the positive relationship comes from. And any movement along the LM curve is because of a change in interest rates. The LM curve as a whole can also shift to the left or to the right. Now that can be caused by a change in price level. Remember, we are dividing by price on both sides of the equation that represents the equilibrium. So a change in price would definitely move the curve. A shift can also occur due to a exogenous change in the real demand or supply of money, and there are 3 examples listed here. So if prices increase, we know that the demand for money is going to increase. That's going to shift the LM to the left. If the real demand for money increases, like we said over here, but it's not due to a change in income, the LM shifts to the left. But if the supply of money increases, the LM shifts to the right. So keep that in mind. What moves the LM to the left? An increase in the demand for money. What moves the LM to the right? An increase in the supply of money. The slope of the LM curve also depends on factors that we've already mentioned in previous videos. So how responsive is the demand for money when there is a change in income? Incomes go up. By how much does the demand for money go up? That's a specific parameter that we need to keep in mind. So we know if this value of K is larger, then the steeper the LM curve will be. And then how responsive is the demand for money to a change in interest rates. And again, if this L parameter is larger, then you have a flatter LM curve. So you can see the book explains this in figure 319, saying that the slope of the curve depends on how much interest rates have to change to re-establish money market equilibrium when there is a change in income. So if income increases from Y0 to Y1, that means that you have to make an adjustment via the demand for money, but how big that change is in terms of the interest rate increase then depends on the steepness of the LM curve. And we'll talk about this in a later video. The steepness of both the IS curve and the LM curve also have an influence on the effectiveness of policy. If the Reserve Bank changes interest rates or the government increases government spending, the impact that has on outputs and income depends on the slopes of the IS and the LM curves. So in conclusion, this video explained the derivation of the LM curve. In the next two videos, we'll put the IS-LM together and show how it can be used as a tool to examine economic shocks and the influence of macro policy.